Hello? Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the B20 conference once again. It's a pleasure to see all of you here today after so many months of planning and preparation. This afternoon, we have a great panel with us. Can you hear? Hello? Okay. Once again, welcome to Ankara. Welcome to the B20 conference. It's a pleasure to see all of you here today, and it's a pleasure to have this panel with us today. Today we're talking about the topic of new energy landscape, how changes in geopolitics, markets, and energy economics alter the energy landscape. To begin our session, I would like to introduce Kenan Yavuz, the CEO of SOCAR Turkey. SOCAR is one of the largest investors and job creators in Turkey, so it's an honor to have them represented here today and to have their support. Without further ado, I would like to introduce CEO Kenan Yavuz.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to extend my warmest welcome to all of you, distinguished guests to panel on new energy landscape. It's a great honor for me to take part in the opening of this panel. Secondly, I would like also to express my highest appreciation to the B20 Turkey conference organization for their efforts to ensure a successful conference. The energy issue continues to be a precondition for identifying the future of our world and creating a safer world. Since a period of the last 2 centuries, unfortunately, the fight over energy resources is increasingly going on. The conflicts and disputes over the energy resources continue to embody the most significant potential threat for the future of the world. In 21st century, as the big populated countries, especially like China and India, have begun to take an increasingly greater share of contemporary life, it is not difficult to predict the battle of energy resources will continue more violently. The need of the countries with the energy resources for the energy demand security, the need of the energy consumer countries for the energy supply security. And this results in today's most important political problems. Growing population, booming economies, and growing prosperity are increasing the global energy needs. The fossil fuels and the alternative energy are the most crucial discussion issues that shape the energy policy today. Although there have been significant developments related to alternative energy sources in the recent years, energy production based on oil, natural gas, and coal, and the dependence on nuclear energy are not decreasing. Quite the contrary, continue rising. As of today, the share of oil and natural gas is 25%. And will rise 60% in 2040. The share of renewable energy based on sun and wind in total production cannot reach to the desired level. And especially with the discovery of the shale gas, the solar and wind investment have begun to decline. The water, as the most important source of renewable energy, draws intense criticism as it leads ecocide, I mean ecological destruction, when used for energy production. The theories that suggest the energy to be a bridge of peace instead of conflict between countries are unfortunately ineffective in real life and just stay as a utopia level. Despite the utopia of energy sources being a bridge of peace, Turkey offers an extremely pleasing example to the world with dazzling project undertaken in recent years. Its location as a bridge connection the energy resources to one of the world's most important energy consumption points. Europe highlights Turkey's geopolitical importance. With their pilot project, Turkey and Azerbaijan offer highly original project to our regions and world peace. Southern Gas Corridor project being realized for the transport of energy resources of Caspian region. That is of increasing importance in recent years to Europe. Has gained the distinction of being pioneering project with regard to other energy sources in the region. We, as State Oil Company of Azerbaijan Republic, SOCAR, are realizing TANAP project, which is the most important part of the Southern Gas Corridor that we are carrying out working together with the Republic of Turkey. TANAP has been a pioneer and leader project on the way of providing the reach of other energy resources in the region to the European market. I would like to thank to everyone who contributed to B20, in particular to the Union Chamber of and the Commodity of Turkey, and I wish this conference great success. Thank you very much.
To get started, what would you like to talk about first?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I will moderate this session.
Yeah.
My name is Arturo Gonzalo, and I'm Corporate Director of Institutional Relations of Repsol. And thank you very much to the organizers for the opportunity to moderate this session. I think this session comes at a very timely moment. We intend to talk this afternoon about the new energy landscape and how changes in geopolitics, markets, and energy economics alter the energy landscape. I could have added here how climate policies also alter the energy landscape, and I know that Teresa is going to refer to that among other panelists. And I think we are at a certain crossroads at the moment. Many things are happening. The scenario is changing very rapidly. There are different drivers pushing in different directions. This afternoon, I would like to invite our panelists to talk about two main elements of the landscape. The first is how the new oil prices scenario and how the new global growth scenario are changing the landscape. That has a lot of consequences. Low oil price determines also a low investment intensity, and that may have serious consequences in the future because despite slowing economies, emerging economies like China, still energy consumption is growing and is expected to continue growing in the future. So more investment is going to be needed, in different energy sources, but the current scenario is clearly reducing also the investment in the sector. This also has geopolitical consequences. Low oil prices mean winners and losers, and I would like to go into that also with the panel. Who is being benefited from these oil prices, but who can face very serious challenges, taking into account the weight of oil revenues in public budgets and so on. So this is one block of issues to be dealt with this afternoon. And the second, having Paris COP21 just round the corner, and the very widely spread conviction that we have to enter an energy transition in the coming future, and how climate policies are going to affect, are already affecting, are interrelated. How low oil prices affect investment in renewable sectors, for instance. These are not independent worlds at all. So I think we have many very interesting issues. How all these issues interact will determine how the future energy scenario is going to look like. Fortunately, it's not me who has to shed light on that, but the great panel we have this afternoon. We have with us, on top of Kenan Yavuz, who also already addressed us, we have Sinan Ak. He is CEO of Sorlu Energy Group. We have Paul Simons, to the left, Deputy Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. Ahmet Erdem, Country Chairman of Shell Turkey, and Teresa Rivera, Director of the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations of France. I think that they combine very well expertise and intelligence about the different aspects of the question, and I think that we can benefit very, very much from their views. So the session is going to be initiated with short initial speeches by the panelists, 5 minutes each. Please don't exceed the 5 minutes, and later we will enter a Q&A session. So we will start with Sinan. Please, if you want to share your views with us.
Okay, thank you very much for this panel. You know, I believe we are going to talk in deep what you said. But you know, first I would like to start with global warming. It's coming, and Paris is on the way, and everybody needs to be aware of the global warming issues. And this is G20, B20, and everybody has to take care of the carbon emissions controls and everything. You know, carbon emission makes us understand that we are living in the same country, actually, the same world, I'm sorry, because if the carbon pollution is here, it affects everywhere simultaneously. So we have to be very careful. And when we look at the numbers, you know, we understand that the carbon emission has three major sources. You know, one of them is energy, the other one is transportation, and the industry. The third one is the industry and agriculture. So we are the energy companies here. So what we have to do is to understand how we can overcome this problem as together. And as we see, the alternative energy is there, is developing, and which I will talk later on. And some major countries in Europe as well, they are using significant amount of alternative energy. So what we have to do as G20, I believe, we have to make sure that this transition has to be done in the developing and less developed countries as well, so that we can control their emissions and lower their emissions as much as possible. Thank you for the emissions.
Sinan. What's the view, Paul, of the International Energy Agency, generally speaking, about this energy crossroads we are at the moment?
First of all, good afternoon, and I'd like to convey greetings to all of our Turkish friends, personal warm greetings from our new executive director, Dr. Fatih Birol, who is a prominent Turkish energy economist and my new boss. And so we're all very proud to work for this wonderful agency, which is now under very skillful Turkish leadership. I'd also like to thank our Turkish hosts. We have spent the last 3 days with my colleague Sylvia Bayer. Sylvia, you want to stand up? And we've been in Izmir working with a separate G20 group that just works on energy issues. All the G20 countries working on some longer term issues, which I think, again, Turkey has been very effective in signaling are key to global economic growth, global energy security. So, for example, we're working together on the issue of energy access, making sure that the 1.5 billion people worldwide who don't have current access to electricity, that we can move towards providing them electricity access. We're also working together on energy efficiency issues, on renewable energy issues, energy security. Important issues for the future where getting these 20 countries together that represent perhaps 80% of global energy consumption worldwide, we can work together internationally in a cooperative way. And the agency that I work for, the International Energy Agency, actually has capabilities in all of these areas, and we are providing support to the Turkish presidency. That will flow into an energy ministerial next month, and then into the heads of state meeting in Antalya. So that's just a general introduction. I'm sorry, I probably used up my whole 5 minutes just on that. But I have a few slides, but I think I'm going to dispense with the slides because I'll take up too much time. But I'm going to quickly answer the 2 points you raised at the beginning. First, the oil price scenario and the changing landscape. All I can say is that Arturo has answered the question properly. The threat here is declines in investment over time. And the threat is that the developing world increasingly is going to continue to have a high appetite for energy. You have countries like Turkey, for example. Electricity consumption is increasing by 6-7% a year. This is very common in developing Asia. So we need to do everything we can do to ensure that investment levels are kept up. Of course, right now we have tremendous declines in upstream investment. Companies have to recognize the needs of the bottom line. But over time, we have to make sure those investments are made so we don't have an energy shortage type situation in 10, 15 years. So this is a very important issue. The second issue you raised about climate. The IEA has played a very prominent role in issuing some new scenarios which are going to feed into the climate talks in Paris in December. And specifically, we put forward something called a bridging scenario, where we have indicated that simply on the basis of existing technologies, if countries are able to scale up energy efficiency, renewables investment using existing technologies, cutting methane emissions in the upstream, those 3 steps, principally, that we can push forward the date at which global emissions would peak back to 2020. Now, that doesn't mean we're totally on the road to this 2% a year, but basically we're buying time. We're buying time for the other technologies that are in the course of being developed to become economically viable and to kick in. So I think it's an important piece of work. We put this forward and we've put it at the disposal of the climate community, but I think it shows, because we all know that 2/3 of emissions are generated in the energy sector. And yet sometimes the dialogue between the climate negotiators and the energy negotiators is not so present. So one thing the IEA, and I must say this is under Fatih Birol's leadership, has tried to do is to set out some possibilities for governments to take a look at in terms of how you might bend that curve a little earlier on the basis of existing technologies, with the hope, of course, that we get some more drastic cost cuts down the road that will enable other technologies to be able to kick in. So I think on both these issues, the short-term energy issue and on the climate issue, the IEA, our agency, is very active. Again, we're working in support of the G20, and we're looking forward to supporting Turkey in particular in the next few months as it gets ready for this very big summit. And congratulate also the B20 for its work on energy, and I believe we'll also have a B20 event in October that we will be supporting. So thank you.
You have brought to the table many interesting things. We will come back to some of them later. But I would like to stress the importance of efficiency, as you said, because it really seems that efficiency is beginning to be there, and growth, economic growth, is not requiring that much energy anymore. And this is something that has to be kept there because it may alter the future very much. We now have Ahmed. I think Ahmed can give us a very interesting view from an oil company that probably is seeing itself more and more as an energy company, and probably understands very well all these challenges brought together. The challenges of the oil industry, but also keeping in mind the necessity of the energy transition. Please, Ahmed.
Very much. First of all, of course, it's an honor to be here. I would like to congratulate the B20 team for the progress since the beginning of the year. Really great work done, and also for organizing, once again, a very successful event. I mean, first of all, about the prices. The price volatility, as we all know, today is driven by a range of immediate dynamics. So these, of course, include robust growth in production, especially given U.S. shale oil, sluggish global growth, market concerns over prospects of China economy, choice of Saudis not to become a swing producer again, and of course geopolitical uncertainty in remaining high with continued unrest in Middle East, North Africa, and also developments like the recent Iran peace deal. So, and the volatility is there, it will be there, and I think, I mean, we all share the concerns of reduced investments, but of course, eventually this is all again going to come into a balance. This is, I think the point there. Because the fundamental drivers of the long-term energy demand remain consistent. The growing world population, rising prosperity will continue to drive growth of energy demand in coming decades. And we all know history shows that energy use takes off when annual incomes reach around $5,000. And that is, of course, when people spend more on energy consuming goods, more travels, etc. And we have seen this in the recent past also in Turkey, that this is really, how things really speed up. It's also because the phase of growth where countries develop essential infrastructure like transport infrastructure, buildings, waste management systems, etc., which require, of course, energy-intensive inputs like cement, steel, and that is another driver of increased demand. Now, that demand will, again, start leveling off when incomes surpass $15,000, $20,000, when then that is less energy-intensive economic activity, and services, of course, tend to drive further economic growth of countries which reach to that level. Even assuming strong developments in energy efficiency, that relationship is there to stay, and it will stay there. And of course, with the world population of 7 billion today, where 2 billion of that is more or less living without access to modern energy, achieving a global prosperity in a world of 9-10 billion by the end of this century is like doubling what we are talking about energy systems today. So is this going to stay as it is? Is it business as usual for the long term? No. I mean, if you look at this slide, which I think we are trying to show, is it me that, yes, okay. transitions in energy systems are not new. We are already in a transition. We recognize that. But it's not something that started. Around 200 years ago, coal started to replace the wood, dung, and biomass that dominated the energy system until that point. Coal fueled industrial growth, of course. Around the turn of the last century, coal use was complemented by a rise of oil and later gas. And from 1970s until recently, the global system has doubled in size, but the composition of the energy mix stayed relatively static, with hydrocarbons supplying around 3/4 of the energy. However, since the turn of this century, new energy technologies, particularly renewables, wind, solar, biofuels, have moved from the laboratories to mass deployment. Today, these new energies represent around 1% to 2% of the global energy system, but they are, of course, growing at double-digit rates. As this chart shows again, our scenario work, which I don't want to get into too much detail, but you can find it on our websites, etc., given the limitation of time. In both scenarios that we are looking at towards the future, they will grow to dominate the energy system in the second half of this century. But of course, renewables are not a silver bullet on their own. They are intermittent, which means that they also need storage and, of course, backup generating capacity for when the wind is not blowing and obviously when the sun is not shining. And we also have to keep in mind that renewables provide electricity. And electricity accounts only currently for 1/5 of the final energy demand today. So many more sectors of the economy need to be progressively electrified in the coming decades so we can use more of renewables in the energy mix. And again, if we go back to steel and cement production, these need high temperature. That's only thermal fuels like coal and gas can provide. And while, in terms of transport, while electric drivetrains become more common, liquid hydrocarbons, including LNG, will continue to have advantage in price and energy density for a range of transport needs, including freight and air travel. So the global energy transition, prolonged for a period of decades, will involve the integration of both old and new technologies and require enormous amounts of investment. This broadening of the overall energy mix will result in new and hybrid businesses, and we are well aware that successful energy companies of 20, 30, 40 years from now will be those who find and retain value in both of these old and new technologies. This transition, by the way, is not uniform across the globe. Differences exist between countries. Notably, of course, between OECD, developing countries, and countries at earlier stages of deployment. Transitions, of course, will reflect local drivers like the stage of economic development, the cost of technology, the availability of local resources, and, of course, local regulations. One thing, though, is going to stay constant, and that is the government's role. Governments will always and will remain central in shaping energy markets through regulatory and fiscal regimes, through policy choices, subsidies, ownership of assets, and setting, of course, terms of access to resources. The challenge here is that neither governments nor anybody else knows exactly what will work best in this increasingly diverse landscape, given the elements that we just discussed. The only thing that is certain is the need to work together to shape this emerging system effectively, and that would really be my final point to, the need for deep collaboration between policymakers, companies, and of course broader society, and to develop this deep understanding of the complexity of energy systems that will be essential to deliver a prosperous and sustainable future for all of the world.
Ahmed.
Yeah.
And to end this initial round, we have Teresa. Teresa understands very well how the road to Paris is taking place and what are the main issues at stake in Paris. Teresa was a Secretary of State for Climate Change of the Spanish government. Teresa, can you give us an overall view of how you see the process to Paris and the kind of challenges that we, the energy sector, have in front of us?
But I would like to start by picking some of the ideas that you have commented in during these previous minutes. The first of them is that, as you very well pointed since the very beginning, change is happening at an increasing speed. No? I think that there is an increasing understanding that it is something more or less inevitable. I mean, being 9 billion people in 2050, as some of you commented already, means a very different response in terms of energy. And even if the understanding of the climate negotiations toward Paris is relevant and it counts, probably we could say that the major driver in this transformation, among many other things that you have already pointed out, is that energy cannot be perceived as a source of harm, but it needs to be perceived as a source of prosperity. We want energy for all. We want a modern system that does not create these collateral effects. We understand that the climate system is a very delicate machine, and according to the IPCC, we should be around 11 gigatons worldwide in 2050. That means a very, very, very share per person at that time. So this means a huge driver for transformation in the energy system, and I think that all the players, developers, technology innovators, investors, have already assessing, understanding, trying to position themselves into this context, even if we can understand that, as you said, the response coming from governments is absolutely crucial because it helps if there is a consistent framework and an alignment of policies. If it counts on this inclusiveness that we have been hearing about all these days, yesterday and today, in the previous sessions. And probably that's very precisely what Paris should be delivering. A new way to integrate, to deliver common cooperation worldwide on these issues. It's not that it is going to solve the world problems. It's not going that in 15 days all the energy transformation is going to be solved in a sort of Excel file provided by all the countries. Is that governments have the willingness, need to demonstrate that they can put in place some tools to learn together, to face together the challenges, to anticipate what it is going on and correct the mistakes or the risk of failures that may happen, and to accelerate what it is working properly. And I think that this is more or less what we are already perceiving, because the other very interesting fact that we are witnessing in these previous months before Paris starts its climate summit is that the discussions at the national level are starting to take place already. When the United Nations makes this big call to have an universal participation, saying that this is such a big challenge that everybody in a different share, but everybody needs to demand himself, herself, how this is going to play in terms of building a fully decarbonized future, resilient to climate impacts, the first reaction is a sort of shock. Wow, this applies to my own understanding or my own reading of what it is growth and prosperity up to now. And probably the type of development, prosperity, and growth expressed in the traditional terms is not possible anymore. It needs to take into consideration these factors, because otherwise it won't happen in terms of prosperity or growth. We are perceiving how this is creating problems in countries or in regions or in cities where this brings into questions of poverty in energy terms, or health problems or security problems connected to air pollution, and energy. So I guess that everybody trying to identify what is its right deep decarbonization pathway a long time. Understanding that this could only work at least taking into consideration three main pillars: efficiency, energy efficiency, and smart use of the energy. Getting into these clean solutions, broadly speaking, because I think that this is the type of thing we need to get in place, clean solutions in the energy field. And investing, understanding that the type of investments in research and development, the types of investments in the deployment of what it is already available, the use of the ITs as an instrumental sector to identify how well we can organize our energy systems otherwise, are already part of this discussion that I would call putting the seeds into a very relevant transformational challenge. So it's not so much the concrete figures that we can put on the table already, but to start to put things in place that could be able to accelerate on their own and make things much more easier and faster than what we can perceive from today.
Okay, thank you very much, Teresa. I think it was a very, very interesting point of view. Trying to go into detail, what you have just said, it's particularly a big challenge for developing countries and economies. And I want to address my first question to Sinan. Developing countries is where more population is going to try to reach middle classes and is going to try to attain higher levels of prosperity. Population is still growing, so energy demand in emerging, developing economies is going to continue growing. How do you think that in these kind of big emerging economies can be carried out successfully this energy transition? What's the role of renewables in that challenge? And since collaboration among different actors has been mentioned, what do you think that should be the role in this challenge, not only of government, but also of ungovernmental organizations?
Thank you very much for the question. We are a company that is not operating in Turkey, but also in Pakistan. I know both markets, and I know the challenges that we have. We have actually constructed the first wind farm in Pakistan. So it's one of the wind farms, and there are now 5 of them, which is totally about 250 megawatts. And they are hungry for electricity. I can say that because the total population of Pakistan is around 200 million people, where they have only 20,000 megawatt capacity. And when you go back to Turkey, it's like 70,000 megawatts versus 70 million people. So there is a huge lack of power. Still, Turkey is a developing country, and it's the less developed country. You see, there is a lot need for the people. So, when I go there in Turkey, everybody is trying to construct large-scale power plants because they think it's more profitable or it's more secure. Maybe they think they can control the market. But I don't think this is the case anymore because everything is getting to smaller pieces, like your watch, your telephone, and everything is getting smaller and smaller. So as a result, the production of the electric should be smaller as well. And it's easy. When it becomes smaller and cheap, then it's easier to transfer that technology to developing or less developed countries. For instance, solar technology right now is moving ahead. I have some numbers that I would like to share because 8 months ago I had nothing. I didn't know anything about solar. We were just doing wind, geothermal or other, businesses. But later on, I said, let's get into this business and try to understand this. And what I saw is very interesting. In 2000, there was a prediction for 2010, and they asked the people, the authorities, and said, what might be the capacity of the solar farms in the world? And everybody said at around 4,000 megawatts, okay? But when we come to 2010, it was 41,000 megawatts. So nobody knows what's going to happen, actually, yeah? But the same question was asked again in 2010, and they said, what might be the capacity in 2020? They said 113,000 megawatts, which was very high number. But today, even today, the number is 150,000 megawatts in the world. So in China, in Malaysia, in different countries, major companies put a lot of new factories, panel production factories, and the capacity of the panel production is around 50,000 megawatts per year right now. This is the capacity. And with the new investments that are coming in line, it will go up to 100,000 megawatts per year. This is a huge number. And these producers are looking for markets, and as a result, the prices are going down as well. So maybe 5 years ago, the 1 megawatt production was around $3 million. Now it's $800,000. And when I look at the numbers for the future forecast of those companies, it seems that it's going to go down to maybe less than $500,000 per megawatt. And this is one size of the panel is this size, so you can easily transfer it to less developed countries and over there, and put it on top of their roofs or farms. The sun is there. There's no problem with the sun as well. So and they want to do it. They want to do it. On the other side, the other interesting issue is the battery world. When you look at the battery costs, again you see similar numbers and expectations. Every year, everybody has to review their forecast about what's going to cost the per kilowatt hour cost for battery. So it's going down very rapidly as well. Once the battery system and the renewables come together, then it's going to be like a base load production, and it will be very helpful because, when you go to Pakistan again, I will give the same example. People can only get about electricity for 4 hours per day. So everybody has to put generators, diesel generators in their houses. So, and it costs a lot, and it's not easy to find diesel as well all the time. So if they are able to convert these generators with panels and battery systems, their life will be a lot easy from our point of view, from my point of view. So I believe there is a lot of things can be done about the solar technology in the coming years, and also it serves for the emissions as well on the other side. Huh?
Thank you very much, Sinan, for bringing the issue to these practical matters. I think it's very important, and I agree very much with you that we are heading towards an energy system with a smaller and more distributed facilities and installations.
Of course, it's very important. When you have micro systems, then you don't need to construct the grid lines as well. In those countries, there is no grid lines. If you construct 2,000 megawatt power plant somewhere, it's a large country. It's not easy for them to transfer it. So microgrids is very critical for those countries as well. So I think this adds value for the solar manufacturers, solar potential in those countries, I believe.
While this future, low carbon future arrives, oil continues to be being a good part of the scenario. Paul, I think the agency understands better than anyone else how the future may look like. The future later does whatever it wants, but probably you understand better than anyone else how supply and demand may look like in the coming years. And you mentioned the importance of investment. What impact may that evolution of supply and demand have on investment? And also, we've been discussing a lot about the slowing down of Chinese economy, but still, it seems that oil imports are increasing, Chinese oil imports are increasing. How do you see specifically the Chinese and Southeast Asia role in supply and demand scenario in the coming years?
Well, I think on the oil markets issue, on the oil markets issue, kind of looking out to, it's really a question of how far you want to extend the crystal ball. But let's take it the next 18 months through the end of 2015 and all the way through 2016. Our sense is that the markets are probably going to be fairly robustly supplied. We still have OPEC supply coming on stream, and some of the expected capping and falling off, in particular of the U.S. production, has not occurred as quickly as many thought. We were talking about this before the session, but when costs get so high, up to $120, $130 a barrel, there become a lot of inefficiencies in the system. And so I think we're finding that a lot of the producers can continue putting more notches in the belt, but even more notches. So we still haven't quite seen even the U.S. production level off and start to go down, even though rig counts are down, for example, and we know that investment levels have been slashed. But a lot of these producers, in particular in the tight oil areas, have found ways to improve their efficiency and to keep production going. So I think that's going to really factor into the forecast over the next year or so. And if you look at our forecast, they don't really show the U.S. production. It shows it leveling off, but not really declining very much. So I think I think we don't see it coming down too much. So, but at the same time, we do see global demand increasing. And there has been some impact this year. We're getting, after the global financial crisis, I mean, we really had a different type of recovery. We had a recovery that didn't involve as much oil consumption in the recovery as we had before. We're getting a bit of a cyclical change in terms of energy efficiency and energy intensities going down. This is not just because of China, although China is an important factor. China, of course, is changing the structure of its economy. It's not quite as industrial heavy a recovery. But this is happening all around the world, too. So we're seeing more energy efficiency. We're seeing the effects of investments that have taken place over time. So, for example, last year, we found that the energy intensity worldwide increased by about 2.4%, which is more than double. Energy intensity declined by 2.4%, which is a big decline. So we could see some changes as a result of structural changes in economies, and that could factor in too. It could factor into the fact that this may be a less globally oil-hungry oil recovery than we've seen in the past. At the same time, we still have forecasts that indicate that 97% of global energy growth, in the next 30 years is going to be in developing Asia. So even though countries in Europe and the U.S. are slowing down, we're still going to have big increases in developing Asia, even taking into account those changes in energy intensity. So over time, there's going to be a need to put more oil out in the marketplace. And so the investment issues that you raised are going to have to be dealt with. Clearly, at some point, it's going to equilibrate. But we are keeping a close eye on upstream investment levels and plans of both the international oil companies as well as the national oil companies. And I believe our latest figures indicate for 2015 declines of about $150 billion this year from original plans. So that's a fairly substantial decline in 2015. 2016, I don't know. I don't think the companies have announced yet. But clearly, with price levels low, I think perhaps Ahmed is in a better position to say, but I think those investment levels will definitely be under pressure as well next year.
We have a wonderful opportunity to know Shell views on this, on investment specifically. We agree that massive investment is required to continue supplying the growing energy demand. We have to face very serious access to energy challenges. So this is crucial in the long run. But Ahmed, what do you think that governments can do to create a more positive investment environment, and what can they do to attract investments to the specific challenges of the energy sector?
Referring to the previous things that I mentioned about governments, authorities' roles in this, I think this is a key area. According to the International Chamber of Commerce, depending on the overall energy use, the increase in demand, and also the pace of expansion of low-carbon energy, the level of investment in energy investment is expected to be the largest single area of overall investment, overall infrastructure investment, requiring around $1 to $2 trillion per annum. That is, of course, a huge number that will go on for decades. And, of course, to enable that kind of investment, improving conditions for investments and trade is crucial. It's also about, allowing the trade of that. So I think what you would expect from the governments is to pursue policies which expand the diversity of supply, including maximizing use of all viable and acceptable domestic resources, but also facilitating import and exports of energy. Governments should create the right enabling environment and regulatory framework to be technology neutral also, because that is, I think, key, and that will also encourage diversity of supply. Again, promoting regional cooperation and cross-border energy infrastructure projects, that is required, because, you have to have that flexibility and then the scale. And also implementing market-based policy frameworks that improve the environment for investment, promoting, again, cross-border capital flows, open energy markets, and safeguard users' long-term interests at the same time. That should also enable private ownership and management of infrastructure, of course, where appropriate. Minimizing the wasteful and distorting subsidies is also key. Maybe we should have a different session on agreeing the definition of subsidies, but that's I think, a different discussion. So I think this summarizes what you would expect more from the governments to enable that kind of energy to cope with the demand and also achieve the transition that we are talking about.
Ahmed, it's always important to keep in mind that governments are crucial for giving answers to all these challenges. The COP21 is essentially an intergovernmental great event. Teresa, we in the energy sector wonder what can expect for the day after, in case, as we hope and we foresee, that there is a successful outcome of Paris and there is a meaningful global agreement on this issue. How can what is going, we hope, to be agreed in Paris, going to change practically energy policies and energy investment in the coming years? And correspondingly, we are going also to have here in Turkey a G20 summit. What could we expect from G20 to contribute to address successfully these challenges that we have in front of us?
The success of Paris depends on, as I say, the ability of governments to put in place a system that catalyzes change elsewhere, not just within the climate community as such. It needs to be able to convince that the change is so inevitable that it's much better to manage to drive the transformation, coping the difficulties, ensuring inclusiveness, and working with the different players than wait and see. So the success will depend very much on the inclusion of the concrete tools to ensure this broad picture and this capacity to have a common assessment on how to accelerate the transformation. But it will depend very much also on the rhythm and the consistent action coming from other key players. And probably the most relevant key players outside the climate negotiations community are the financial sector players and the energy sector players. I think that we are trying to learn how we can assess risk and opportunities otherwise. And this is very especially relevant in the energy context and in the G20 context. Later on, you were talking about this impact, this standby, these mixed feelings, or at least mixed feelings on how to read the low oil prices in the energy investments and the decline in the energy investments. This is happening. This is also an opportunity for other things, such as finding easier ways to make a reform of the fossil fuel subsidies in many places. But this is also a risk in terms of how people can read the opportunities in the very short term. Being in danger so that we get into a lock-in situation when taking the wrong decisions on investments that will last for the next 20, 30, 40 years and will give us the profile for what it is going to happen in the years to come. I think that the G20 is a very relevant place where the two communities, business and economic and financial authorities, could lead into a right reading and the creation of the right frameworks to accelerate this transformation through some streams of work that are already on the agenda, and sometimes we tend to forget. The G20 committed itself to work on this fossil fuel subsidies reform, phase out the fossil fuel subsidies, but it may go a little, maybe more clear and transparent on what it means and how it works, on what concrete actions could be undertaken, on how to deal with the most poorest in each society, so to cover some vulnerabilities that could be reacting against these reforms in case they feel in a much more fragile situation. The G20 is also a very good place to coordinate financial aspects, including financial regulation. And let's not forget that it committed to the Financial Stability Board to think about how to express, in terms of risk and opportunities, these questions linked to climate impact risk, or these questions linked to the carbon intensity exposure in terms of financial risk, to what extent this could damage the economy and to what extent this could create a sort of big shock to the health of the global economy in the years to come. So this is another stream of work where the G20 has much to offer in a very traditional financial approach. And the G20 is also committed to better growth and inclusiveness. And it is a great group of countries that have a real relevant share in terms of the global economy, and that can drive or think together, to assess together, how to ensure that the growth and prosperity of a big share of the world, emerging economies, can find the means to take the right decisions to ensure prosperity for their people, for their societies, without putting at risk their own future in terms of economy, environmental, or social reference. So working with the development financial institutions, helping them to identify or to improve the manner to introduce this reference when taking decision at the operational level, trying to support the use of the tools, the instruments they can have in hand in order to offer easier access to funding whenever we are working in these long-term investments that could matter for the profile we want to achieve in the years to come, could be some of the very relevant aspects where the G20 can be very, very instrumental. I think that we have been hearing much about this discussion on green infrastructures and the type of things that could support this much more populated world in the years to come, with many people willing to prosper, to have better wealth. And I think that the G20, while combining all these profiles, could be very helpful and instrumental in achieving it.
Teresa, I think that Paul wanted to react to your ideas.
Reinforce that point about the importance of the reduction of the inefficient and wasteful fossil fuel subsidies. That is a point actually that in Izmir, in our energy working group, we took up. And the IEA actually has for many years been monitoring those subsidies, and there is a slide on it. I don't know if it will show up. But actually there's been a tremendous amount of work that has been done over the last few years in terms of subsidy reduction. And in particular in 2014, our estimate is that those subsidies would have been about 25% higher. This is the slide. In the absence of reforms that have been taken in this G20 context. So the G20 is actually, they put this item on the agenda back in 2009. I have to say it was largely the finance ministers that put it on, but it's the energy guys that figured out how to fix the problem. And so it's an issue for both the finance and the energy, but you can see the little green box there that says subsidy reforms. The subsidies, quite frankly, they've been going up because when international prices go up and you don't adjust your pump prices, you're going to get more subsidies. But were it not for those subsidy reforms, we would have had even higher levels of subsidies. So it's still a huge problem. I would also note that in talking about climate, I think I really want to reinforce this point, which I think has already been made by Teresa, but the energy community and the climate community, and perhaps the finance community, they really need to talk more to each other. And quite frankly, they don't. And they need to. And so we need to work on that. So you need to listen to your energy ministers. Because they're the ones who are under pressure from the citizens of the country who say, I need to increase, I need to use more electricity, I need access, I want to buy a refrigerator next year, I want to buy my first car, and I need the growth, I need the energy growth to do that. We have to do it in a clean way, but you have to accommodate that and in the planning. And so I think that's very, very important. That's the reason we came out with this report earlier this year to kind of say, okay, how can you bend that curve, but without hurting economic growth? We all want to bend the curve on climate, but without hurting the economic growth and without disturbing this need to provide more energy and to provide energy access. So I think this is an important point.
We've been talking about these crossroads among sustainability, security of supply, competitiveness from a global point of view. But being in Turkey, I think it's worthwhile trying to to look at this crossroads also with a Turkish dimension and perspective. Sinan, you know very well Turkey's energy sector. How do you think this can be achieved in Turkey, providing the growing energy demand, providing that energy that the prosperity and growth of Turkey need, but also at the same time helping Turkey to contribute to the reduction of global emissions that is going to be a general requirement, let's say?
Turkey has a unique position in the carbon emissions because, when the Kyoto Protocol was being signed, maybe 20 years ago first, Turkey was assigned like a developed country. So back in those years, the emissions was very low in Turkey. Now it's way above. So we are not able to. We don't have any targets right now because of that reason. So we have to set a new target about the emissions while we are growing. This must be done and agreed, I guess, to start with. On the other side, Turkey has around 72,000 megawatt capacity, and there are huge targets for the GDP growth in the coming 10 or 15 years. And you see everywhere in the televisions around the Congress saying that, we target to become the 10th largest economy in the world. So in order to do that, you have to invest into energy first. Afterwards, you invest into factories, maybe in sequence. So as a result, we have to add another 50,000 approximately to 70,000 megawatt capacity in the following 10 to 15 years. How can we do it? What can be done is very challenging because we are a country located in the middle of natural resources, but don't have anything. So we have to manage somehow to bring those resources to Turkey. TANAP is one of the projects going on right now very well, and also there are other resources like in the Mediterranean, the new gas fields. Also, we can bring additional gas from Russia. Maybe it's good time to negotiate about it because they have problems with Ukraine, so they need to pass it through Turkey in order to be on the safe side. And also, there's gas in North Iraq, so it's full of gas. But we use maybe the highest. We pay maybe the highest value for that gas. So in real terms, for good, we have to use gas, but we are targeting right now coal power plants. Why? Because the coal prices went down significantly in the world, and they don't have customers. Colombians are are trying to sell all of their coal to Turkey. That's how I feel. So unfortunately, right now we are planning to put coal power plants all over Turkey instead of gas. I don't see anyone is trying to invest into gas power plants right now. So this has to be sorted out in the coming years because the gas price should get lower in Turkey, and as a result, we must be constructing gas power plant. This is my personal target, believe. On the other side, of course, the renewables. Turkey is rich of renewables, we can say. You have to invest into renewables, and the potential is there. All the individual households or people are trying to invest into solar because the new law allows people to invest without license if you construct something under 1 megawatt. So everybody is looking for solars, and the total capacity for solar like 50 megawatts, compared to Germany, which is more than 40,000 megawatts right now. So there is huge potential for Turkey to invest into solar. So the government has to put efforts on this, and they should go faster to give new licenses for the people, for the companies, so that they can invest into solar in the coming years. So I saw a report from Bloomberg actually. They say that when we look at the Turkish grid, if Turkey only invests into renewables in the coming 10 years only, not coal or gas, they can sustain their economic growth. So this is their report. So of course, one issue I forget about it. Our government is now working on the nuclear powers. So we want new nuclear power, new plants in Turkey. So, and I believe it's a good strategic target. So, if we can put one or two nuclear power plants, then these renewables are enough for us to sustain our economy. So, so there is a huge challenge for the government, I guess, because, but we are in the middle of election again, so I don't know how it's going to move on. But we must have to renegotiate all of our gas agreements, and we have to find a way to use more gas, I believe. On the other side, to reduce the emissions. On the other side, we have to open road for the renewables, so that they can invest, everybody can invest with the current, and the current feed-in tariff is more than enough for everybody to invest. So, and strategically, of course, you have to invest in nuclear as well. That's how I believe.
Thank you very much, Sinan. I'm going to ask Paul very briefly. I will ask the rest. I'll make two final questions to Ahmed and Teresa. And I will ask Paul very briefly to react to this. What do you think about the actions that Europe, but specifically Turkey, can take to ensure the supply of gas in a context with transit risks and different difficulties in the gas infrastructure system?
Maybe 30 seconds. I just wanted to expand a little bit on Simon's comment about coal, and just point out that Turkey is not the only large developing country that for energy security reasons is kind of staking a good portion of its electricity future on coal. We see countries like India, Indonesia. Now China's going to peak its coal fairly soon. But other countries that are at a different stage in their development, a lot of them for energy security reasons are looking at coal. But I think it's also important to keep in mind that there are coal plants that are a lot more efficient than others. Some are a lot more efficient and produce a lot fewer carbon emissions than others. So in our scenario, for example, that we talk about where we bend the curve on the carbon emissions, one key element of that is switching to the most efficient coal plants. We don't say that coal plants have to be completely eliminated in the short run, but we say in the short run, immediately, of course, ideally you would switch out of them, but in the meantime, switch immediately to the most efficient coal plants, and you can get a tremendous amount of carbon savings from that. So I just point that out. As far as, do you want to respond?
Yeah. I wish, the regulation is there so that everybody invests in the latest technologies for the coal. But when you look at the market in Turkey, nobody says that if you go for a cheaper or Chinese products, you will, or if you go for a European models, you will get a better tariff. Okay, so the Chinese products and the high-level coal plants are competing with the same prices. So one of them has a higher cost, the other one has a lower. So everybody in Turkey, as far as I see, which we don't, but they are selecting the old versions. Huh? That is.
Let me moderate. We have 10 minutes left.
Yeah,
We would have
okay.
liked to take a couple of questions from the floor. I don't know if it will be possible. But I will ask...
I'll answer your other question if you would like about Turkey.
Please do it briefly, and we will go then to Ahmed and Teresa.
Just a one-word answer, which is diversification. Turkey has diversified its gas sources, and really energy security for importers is all about diversification of sources. Turkey is already looking at Azerbaijan. They're getting some gas from other sources from Iran, in addition to from obviously a quantity from Russia. They're opening up LNG, but there could be other gas sources in the Mediterranean. There are a number of finds that have been made recently, and the LNG market is expanding worldwide. So the key, we think, from an IEA perspective, is diversification.
A very clear answer to the question, definitely. Ahmed, we've been talking about greenhouse gas emissions. Oil companies usually tend to be criticized for being the source of these emissions. What do you think of that? And what do you think an oil company like Shell can contribute to the energy transition? What kind of attitude has Shell towards renewable, for instance?
You are right. The major oil companies are kind of, in that sense, especially production of oil and gas, contribute to carbon emissions, and the majors, we as Shell recognize our responsibility in that field. However, the reality of that, I mean, this is not a defensive statement, but we supply products that economies demand to grow, to sustain also. If the aim is to decrease the carbon emissions, which obviously it is, this change is needed in every sector of the economy. I mean, we need to come up with new designs for cities, new designs for cars, new ways of producing goods and other commodities. We have been talking about a transition to come, but energy is something that the rest of economy depends on it. And, you know, the economy needs to change, so the energy transition to take place. Otherwise, if that demand is there, that is, if the industries, if the sectors don't change, that is going to, you know, continue. But if you look at, I mean, what companies can do, as I mentioned in the previous part of the conversation, you need to recognize what is, you know, what kind of energy people will need and will prefer after 20, 30, 40 years if you want to be a successful, sustained energy company. So in that sense, we do a lot of work. I mentioned we do our scenarios. We work with a lot of other stakeholders, which IEA is, of course, one of them. We have to recognize also their contribution into that thinking. But if you look at, for example, Shell, since 2009, we have been investing more than $1 billion every year into, you know, into innovation, technologies, and developing, you know, technologies to reduce the carbon emissions, to work on other, you know, renewable energies. That is also included in there. If you look at, again, Shell, we have significant investments in wind power in North America and also in Europe. We are an anchor investor in hydrogen fueling network in Germany. So that is coming up. And we are also the largest producer of ethanol through our joint venture in Brazil globally. And needless to say, also Shell is at the forefront of carbon capture and storage innovation, which could remove up to 90% of carbon dioxide emissions from power generation and play a key role in moving towards, of course, lower carbon future. Shell has committed or commissioned more carbon capture and storage capacity than anyone else in the world. And we still have, you know, projects coming on. There is one in Scotland, a big one at Peterhead gas-fired power plant. And of course, Shell will remain as an oil and gas company for a while, as long as, you know, this transition is happening. But I must say, as of now, we are more of a gas company than an oil company, because we believe natural gas is a versatile, abundant, and also cleaner burning fuel. And we are also world leader in LNG, delivering the cleanest hydrocarbon to consumers around the world. So this is, how we become a part of this transition, and I believe there is more to come from Shell in the coming periods on this. Yeah. Thanks.
That energy transition means also energy companies transition, and we have to do that, of course.
Together, otherwise no transition on one side is not going to happen, of course.
Teresa, you've mentioned that briefly, but I would like to go back to it. Do you think that low oil price is bad news for the renewable sector, that it may make them less competitive? Do you think that this is a worry for those that are fighting climate change and those that are supporting the renewable sector?
I say that there are a mix of feelings on that. No, on one side we could think, yes, it can mean some standby reactions for some renewable energy investments. Not so much as previously thought. I think that there has been a recovery after a while, because it will depend very much on the price of upfront capital and the expectations in terms of return. So I think that broadly speaking, globally, probably it has not been such a great impact for many uses that could exist under any other condition, because they make sense as such. And it has been not such a good news in terms of efficiency and economies of energy. And it has been not so good news either in terms of new deployments and new investments in technologies that were not so mature. But that applies also to the oil sector as such, the oil and gas sector as such. I think that it could be read the other way round. I could be a little bit provocative. That also proves that this sort of mantra that the oil was always going to have a great value in markets may not be as true as we thought it could be. I mean, that also proves that this assessment on the risk of counting on some overestimates on the worth of some companies and investments may be true. So, and there are secondary effects in some countries that had some emerging economies that had connected their investments in the public services for the middle class to the exploitation of new resources that are not reachable at hand right now. No? But I would like to add, if you allow me, 3 or 4 ideas that have not come in. Yes, just the headline. First of them, I think that this is not a sort of marginal adjustment and let's wait and see in 10 years what happens. I think that we need to be fully aware that this is a great transformational challenge. The sooner we seriously pose the right questions, the higher level of possible success we may have. The second thing is that, of course, transport is still one of the biggest challenges. And I think that it combines many things. It combines technologies and oil demand and the certainty that oil demand was going to be there forever and that the technology breakthroughs could take a long time to happen. And it may be necessary that they speed up this in a context where there are too many questions, but it also depends on many other policies. I mean, we do want these big cities that are growing every single day. They do want to look like Stockholm, or they do want to look like Dallas. I mean, this also has relevant implications in the use of energy, and it implies certain level of urban design, certain level of public services in the transport and mobility answer. So there are other things that are connected to this in a context where we will be the big conference on Habitat 3 next year. So the role of our cities is relevant here. The third thing is that was pointed by you, I think, at the very beginning. We will be witnessing big changes in the business model. And this is a challenge for everybody, but including the energy companies, the traditional energy companies, the type of demands, the type of offers, the type of services that will be demanded will be very, very different. And I think that one of the drivers, I was trying to point it out, is that also a social perception of the different solutions is changing very, very, very fast. So you may risk finding yourself in the bad side where you could not like to be in advance, no? And I think that this is part of the drivers that are transforming also the approach of the oil companies to this thing, where there maybe they've got a great understanding on other possible use, industrial capture for industrial purposes or for chemical purposes of carbon. I mean, there may be many other things that will be witnessing in the very short term future.
I think that was a wonderful conclusion to this conversation. So really we've run out of time. I think that most issues have been dealt with at the panel. Panelists are going to be available around if you want to approach them and go into further detail. At this point, I would appreciate very much your contributions. I think it was really very interesting. And I would also appreciate the presence of all of you. And I would ask our chair, Kenan, to say a few words to close the session, that I think that your initial intervention has framed very well all the issues that have been discussed later in the panel. So, Kenan.
Thank you. There is lack of economic growth in the world, but we should not forget that 1.5 billion people right now have been waiting electricity. On the other hand, the population still growing, so the world needs more and more energy. So how we can meet this demand? In my personal opinion, first of all, we should focus on macroeconomic risk. I mean uncertainties, political uncertainties in global climate framework, global recession, currency uncertainties, and energy prices and volatility, and the last one is very important nowadays, terrorism. Secondly, energy, geopolitical and regional issues. As the third, energy policies and business environment, such as trade barrier, energy subsidies, and regional interconnections. As last, energy vision and technology. Among them, energy prices and associated volatility is the top critical uncertainty for energy leaders in every region of the world. Oil prices have seen historic decline. One of the most important risks, another risk, is China. You know, China economy, weaker demand growth, and global energy players are used to look China as the key market opportunity. As a result, I believe that 2015 will be a momentous year for global energy market. The implications of changes to global energy landscape have become increasingly clear, and 2015 may be the year in which dramatic steps are taken and possible solutions are found, hopefully. And all these subjects discussed by distinguished panelists. Enjoy the panel and thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Please join me in an applause for the panel.
Thank you, Arturo. Thank you, Kanan. Thank you, panelists. Enjoy the rest of your conference.